Cool. Okay, my name is Chris Gibbs. I'm with DLR Group in the Minneapolis office. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. It is, with me today is Matt Helgerson, and I'll let him introduce himself when he gets his opportunity to speak. And the beautiful part of this, many of us are architects and designers, and Matt is an educator. He is a former teacher, a former principal, and now a superintendent. And he's going to do most of the talking, which is really awesome. Because that's, frankly, I've sat in your seat for many, many, many years, and that's what I want to hear. And we had the wonderful opportunity to work with Matt on a renovation in addition to a middle school. You will see all sorts of pictures of that throughout the presentation. And then at the end, we will appease you with a few kind of running of pictures and talking a little bit about the details of that project and another middle school project we did. The whole emphasis of this is that the day in the life of a student is very different today than it was 20 years ago, obviously, and maybe even different than it was last year, and that it's changing consistently. So we took this idea to say, okay, what does the day in the life of a student look like, and what should it look like, and what can it look like, and how does that compare to even things in the corporate world where all these students are going at the end of the day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and full active participation is all I would say to begin with.
Thank you, Chris. As Chris said, I'm Matt Helgerson. I'm superintendent at Jordan Public Schools. It's a, I guess it's a suburban school, kind of suburban, about 15 minutes from Hazeltine National Golf Course, where the Ryder Cup is taking place right now. And but I'd much rather be here talking to you. In fact, I'm more nervous talking to you than I am 300 employees in an auditorium at the beginning of the school year. I guess that's because they're my people, you know. So I am looking forward to a conversation today, and we're going to start that conversation with a presenter view here. And what we're going to do with this, you can use your smartphone or laptop or whatever it might be that you have with, hopefully you have. And up on the top, let's see, up on the top where you see ask a question at goo.gl/slides/T7, etc. That is a place where you, with Google, can ask questions of us during the presentation. I know we only have an hour, so we're going to test that out, see how it works. And if you have any questions about what you see up on the screen, please feel free to do that, and we will answer our questions throughout the presentation. We'll try to get a couple, and then at the end. So going back here to the first slide, we're going to talk about collaborative and flexible environments. And what I did when Chris asked me to be a part of this, I said, yes, absolutely. I'm passionate about creating styles of learning, or creating working styles to mimic, creating learning environments to mimic the working environment. And we happen to be in a very progressive area of Minnesota, very close to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and about 15, 20 minutes away from our campus, there happens to be a corporate environment that one of my board members is works for that particular corporate environment. I promised I wouldn't use their name. But we had the opportunity to go visit that environment, and what I saw there was validation for what we need to do in the educational environment. The collaborative spaces, breakout areas, really turning schools into more of a business-like model, preparing kids for the 21st century, and giving them also those creature comforts. So we're going to show that here today. Obviously, you've seen this. I've been in several presentations throughout the week, and I've seen pictures like this. This is on the left-hand side is a factory environment, and then on the right-hand side is a classroom that really mimics that environment. And we don't need those environments in our schools anymore. We have to ask ourselves, and we're going to be talking about the why, and I'm going to show a video that's pretty inspiring. At the end of the presentation, it talks about why we do things. So we are asking ourselves a lot this year as an educational institution, what is our why? Why are we building the spaces we're building? Why are we teaching what we're teaching? And what do kids need from us? Our traditional classrooms model that factory with an assembly line style environment, as we have seen. And our school buildings throughout the country are 1900s style buildings, and we're trying to solve 21st century problems. One of the terms that Chris introduced me to when we first met 4 years ago was the cell and bell concept. And I had a chance to come to the Indianapolis conference, I believe 4 years ago. And that's when I first started thinking about architecture and education and how it was intertwined and trying to accomplish something greater than what we already have in our system. So our system needs to change. Modern workplace practices that are, of course, changing. And the biggest thing that I see is our parents and our kids are demanding that we evolve. And if we don't do it, especially where I am superintendent, the kids and their families will just open and roll to the next neighboring district 5-10 miles away, where they'll get a better education. So we're in a very highly competitive area, and we need to make sure that we're providing the skills that kids need to move forward and become productive and creative members of our workforce. We have our learning styles, and we're probably all familiar with those, at least to a certain degree. I'm not going to read them verbatim to you, but we have our types where we learn in groups or with other people. We have our visual learners, those who enjoy drawing pictures, learning through the art, the various arts. We have our oral, that's the auditory musical. They prefer using that song and music, etc. The physical, which is that movement component. Solitary, where we like to work alone, and we have a number of students that like that as well. Using those words, and then the logical, mathematical. You're going to see in slides and in videos today our students preparing to, or our students using these 7 learning styles to prepare for the workforce in the future and learning the way that they want to learn. So the LR group has been very enjoyable to work with, and they've taught me a lot about workspaces and learning environments. So I'm going to start with a video clip from one of the architects at DLR Group that really sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today.
I'm Jeremy Reading, and I'm an architect and design lead at DLR Group. There's a lot of this overlap between education that plays into workplace, and the same things happen between workplace and civic. And so we call it this workplace civic mashup. It's no longer you just sit at your cubicle. Spaces are set up differently for the type of work you're going to be doing. It's the same way as schools, right? We no longer sit with 26 desks all facing the front of the classroom anymore. Now we have different small learning groups, and we're seeing the same thing now happen in civic. People don't want to work in just your typical office anymore. They want a space that really starts to blend their public and private life. It could be a coffee bar, it could be a gym, but it's all these things that start to make your work more like it would be if you were at home in a home office. On the civic side, especially, we've started taking some of these people through tech offices. And when they first get there, they're like, why are we here? This doesn't even apply to us. And they start to walk around and say, well, why doesn't this apply to us? Why wouldn't we have a coffee bar where we could talk to the public as they come in? Why do we have a phone in our desk versus a video conferencing system so we can see the nonverbal types of language? Why don't we have different types of meeting spaces? For the longest time, people were asked to kind of go one direction. People such as myself now are finding that we can take the best of what each group is doing and apply it to another sector or another project type. Tech campuses especially have created spaces for the accidental meeting to occur. This is the reason that they ended up adding food programs and gyms and these outdoor amenities. It creates meetings that you wouldn't think could happen. Quite often we'll go grab a couple of people and run to a nearby coffee shop just because it's a different place, right? You can have a better conversation sometimes. That same idea should happen at the workplace too, that you need to make spaces that people can be very comfortable working. You want a place where people can really feel like they're doing their best work. And I think if you create a space that can help accommodate that, and really accommodate that, not just on paper do it, then people will do their best work. And when you do that, you feel very fulfilled, and that is honestly what it's all about, right? That's why we're all here, is to do our best work.
Okay, you saw in the slides there was a picture of a elevated track. We integrated that as part of our middle school model. It was an addition. Our community was starving for things for them to do. And so what we did is we integrated a community center, and it doubles as a middle school classroom. We have multi-purpose space, we have gym space, we have fitness space, hopefully eventual pool space. But it's a place where those conversations, those accidental conversations, Google talks about that a lot, those casual collisions, as they call them. Those occur all the time in this type of environment because we have an integration between the community and the middle school classroom, the middle school building. So people, senior citizens, for example, every day they come, we have Caribou Coffee in the upper level. They come, they have a cup of coffee, they walk the track, they interact with our kids. It's a great way for them to learn from all different ages, and it's really a byproduct that I wasn't even anticipating. And we've had people say, you know what, we didn't vote for this referendum, but the next time one comes around, we're going to vote for it. So integrating more of that community and getting people bought in has certainly been a wonderful thing. I hope that you're prepared to interact a little bit more here, because what I'm going to ask you to do next, and hopefully you can break it up into some small groups. I had planned for 8 groups, and we can still do that, I think. If you would break up into, just a second before you do that, I'm going to have you break up into small groups to a total of 8, and there's an article. It's an 11-page article that I'd like you to read. It's from the New York Times, and I have it broken down into chunks. So each group is going to read about a page and a half, and then what I'm going to ask you to do in your group is to summarize that page and a half, and then we're going to put it all together to create a one large summary for the 11 pages. And it's an interesting document, actually. It was shared with me by the company that I went and visited, had some conversations with their head of real estate and development, and it has a lot to do with higher ed and what higher ed is doing to evolve and meet the demands of the corporate workplace. So I hope that you enjoy the article. If you can go, and I'll put it up on the screen too, but if you wanted to, it'll work better if you put in this bit.ly, and that's right on the lower hand corner here. If you put that into your device, you can certainly access the article. And I will pull the article up, and the problem with that is you only see a little bit at a time. So let's break down into small groups of 8. I'm just going to let you do that on your own, unlike an elementary or a middle school classroom where I would assign you groups, probably numbers. But if I could have you break down into small groups of 8, that'd be great. Don't be shy. No. You guys need me to go back? It's a Google Doc. It's a link to a Google document that we converted. Everybody have it? Anybody able to grab it? All right. It's called the Innovation Campus, and it's a New York Times article. You probably could find it if you went into the New York Times and Googled Innovation Campus, building better ideas as well, if you're not able to open. But you can see on the left-hand side, I have it broken down into numbers. So I'm not seeing groups line up here, so what I'm going to do is just probably go ahead and assign you. So group 1, all right. You two gentlemen, I'll be group 2. I'm going to let you guys be group 3. Group 4. Let's go group 5. Why don't you join that group over there? It's group 1. I'm going to have you guys join group 2.
Where's group 2?
Right back there, the 2 gentlemen in the back table. Okay, you guys are going to be group 6, the 3 of you. Group 7. Can I have you 2 be group 8? And all you have to do is read your section. So the corresponding number on my slideshow corresponds with your group number. So I'll just run through it here. Group 1. You can't get to it? Okay. Let me show you. I'll show you where to. Only if they link to it. It starts in many of the new buildings and goes all the way up to Cornell Tech. Okay.
So we both got it on the New York Times website.
Excellent.
So if there was a specific
Yep.
piece we were supposed to look at.
Can you scroll all the way towards the bottom or the end of the full article? Yep. Yeah. I'll show you up on the screen where to start. It starts with the Wichita State part. Yep. Yep. And goes right to the end. It is blank right now. we can just do old-fashioned Q&A. Okay, if I was in a classroom right now, and when I was teaching middle school, I'd put up a timer. I'd give you a minute and a half. So let's take another minute, have that conversation about how to summarize that piece, and then we'll go ahead and share. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to each group. If I could get everybody's attention back. I'm going to go around to each group, and I'm going to ask that group to share their summary, and we'll go ahead and put everything together. So we're going to start with group one. Who would like to be the spokesperson?
I think it's just the preamble to the whole. It was the preamble to the whole article talking about an example of MIT's an MIT building that was just basically a warehouse that people took and while they were in there they just tore it apart to make it the kind of space that they wanted. Then Gary did a building that emulated some of those concepts, turned it into a variety of spaces and multi-discipline spaces and fitness and childcare. Yes, and proximity.
It was to be proximity and conversation and serendipitous. So it was that they would bump into each other deliberately and they'd have these big picture, accidental conversation, right?
Great, thanks. Group two.
Yes, it it talked about in many of the new buildings the industrial feel of the buildings in terms of their architecture, if you will, flexibility of both spaces and furniture. These are sort of the characteristics that they mentioned, that the use of natural daylight, the creation of collaborative spaces to allow for what they called creative collisions. Project-based learning opportunities. And the last paragraph really sort of summed up the dissatisfaction with the workers of the incoming students with the teachers, and the colleges with the incoming students. So we boiled that down into a need for change.
Perfect. You're going to see a quote from the company that I went and visited when we were putting this together, and the design teams said that when the new leadership came into that company, the life was basically being sucked out of their employees, and that was the overwhelming response of why they wanted change. So that sounds, the connection to that article is very similar. So next group, three.
So ours was similar. However, it focused on a building at Cornell Tech that Morphosis is designing. And our summary is that unexpected spaces will yield unexpected results. So it was the inclusion of those types of areas so that students of different backgrounds could come together and share ideas.
So our project was an example of an institute created within the university setting where instead of just having a residential application, it was a residential incubator space mashup. And so it wasn't designated by any major. They ended up with their first class with 35 to 40 different majors, unintended. And so the idea is that you have your variety of residential spaces like you would in a dormitory application, but you would also have incubator spaces down below for students to be able to go in and out of and do tinkering and making work, but have it not be defined by a particular major or college program, so that you would have all that cross, the mixing of the different work that they're doing in that kind of space.